What is going on, guys? We are back at it again. I think this is the third night in a row that you're hearing from us over here at Cover One. That's what you can expect here during the training camp leading up to the season and all throughout the season here, because we just want to bring you the content that the fans want. And we were lucky enough for Erik Turner, the main man, the OG at Cover One, to be at training camp here for day one of Buffalo Bills training camp. So I'm going to get right into it and start picking his brain. Erik, man, you didn't get any sleep, so I don't know if you were able to stay up through it, but how was it, man? How was it be there at day one?
Yeah, I tell you what, it was quite the process getting here. Obviously, I would probably have 2 hours of sleep from working last night, so I'm probably on 2 hours of sleep. Made the drive, about 5.5, 6 hours into Rochester for camp. First time I've been back to the alma mater in like 12, 13 years, man. So that was an experience all in itself, and I'm trying to, familiarize myself with this area again. And of course, we got out to camp pretty early. We got out there probably 45 minutes early. Got a nice spot in the shade because it was warm out there today, man. I don't know how these guys do it in camp, and that's part of the reason why camp is so miserable. But it was hot out there, man, and so we got a nice spot in the shade and, camped out there and got to see a really good practice. Early on it was fast moving, fast paced. It's the first camp and practices I've been to in a long time. So it was definitely an adjustment to see again because, your eyes have to get back in tune with how quickly practices and the segments move and the guys move. So it took a few minutes, but it was overall a good experience off the bat.
Yeah, it seemed like things were definitely moving fast. And before we move too fast into this, I do want to remind everybody where to find us. You can find us. We got the podcast. It's Cover One Buffalo. You can find that on iTunes or anywhere you get your podcast. Go ahead and give us a nice review over there. We can't do it without you guys, so that means a lot to us. And definitely check out cover1.net. Content coming out all the time. I think Nate had something out this morning. 5 things to look forward to camp. Something like that. We'll get the right title there at some point. But cover1.net. And don't forget, I know we've talked about it, that premium subscription, that $10 one. That thing's getting cut off here this preseason soon. I know that a date's coming. So if you've been on the fence about getting that premium content, just pull the trigger, and you're going to want to do that now before that $10 deal's gone. We've been in the Slack channel all day. I know you were posting some stuff, some of the insights that you were seeing that you weren't posting on Twitter. You were coming over to the Slack channel and giving that to the premium members. So you definitely want to get on that. So let's get back into this here because, you talked about the atmosphere a little bit. Before we get into the X's and O's, which is your, what you're the best at, what was the vibe like with the fans? Because I always find it interesting, this is the time of year where the optimism is as high as it is. How were the fans doing when you walked in there, and what did you pick up from them?
Well, I found it funny, just the fans and how they react to guys coming out of the tunnel. Only certain guys, get the cheers. I heard some teenagers and early kids in their 20s asking, about some of the other players coming out whose names they didn't recognize. So, 90-man roster. It's hard to know everybody there, so not everyone gets a cheer. But you could tell everyone was happy that, football was back. And so when the Kyle Williams, the Kelvin Benjamins, the Jerry Hughes, LaShawn McCoys came out that tunnel, the crowd let them know that we're back and ready for this season. And I know one of the first guys out there was Josh Allen. Josh Allen was one of the few, maybe 3 or 4 guys that stopped in the tunnel and immediately started signing autographs, which was really cool. Shady was another one. So there are a few guys that stopped, and usually, that's saved for after practice. But the fans, they got their needs served as far as autographs go right off the bat, and it was nice to see because, especially for Shady, he's going through some stuff right now, and for him to be out on the field, and, playing and doing something that can take his mind off of the stuff he's got going on off the field, it was nice to see him just get out there and play. And I'll tell you what, we're going to get into it. This offense is going to need him because what they are trying to do, what Dable is trying to do on offense, it obviously revolves around this guy. And I'm not talking just handing the ball off to him. Everything is centered around Shady McCoy this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the biggest playmaker out there. And I agree with what you're saying there. I think for everybody, obviously, we had a couple of guys that had some off-season issues, and I'm sure that every one of them is just happy to be back at it. And it's a great atmosphere every time I've been there with the fans. There's great accessibility for the fans at St. John Fisher. So I'm sure everyone's just happy to be there and get this whole thing rolling. Now you talked about the speed of practice, man. Past couple of years, it's always changed a little bit, but it seemed from, at least on Twitter, things were moving pretty fast. Did you see that? And as a player, do you think they prefer just a quick pace to practice, or what are your thoughts there?
It is quick pace, and I know that's kind of, the MO of the league. They want to move through these segments quickly. I didn't see, normally you see like a clock that, they put up 6 minutes, 10 minutes segments. So it kind of lets the players know how much longer they have in a segment. I couldn't see it from my advantage. I was sitting right at the maybe 45, 50-yard line, but I didn't see that. But it was definitely fast-paced. I mean, my wife, this is the first time she's seen football practice, and so I was trying to break it down for her and show her the ins and outs of, just the segments, because each segment is, meant to build upon the next, So they came out with special teams, and we'll start off with that. They did a lot of kick return today, a lot of returns to each side, left and right. The primary returners were Taiwan Jones and Traverse Cadet. And then it was more of like a single returner. Sometimes you see teams, put two guys back there, and whoever the ball's kicked to, they kind of, set up the return. We had a single returner this today, and a couple of the upbacks were Jeremy Curley, Marcus Murphy, Kalen Clay, and then Ray McLeod. So I was surprised not to see Ray deep, but again, first practice, and I'm sure Jones and Cadet being the returning guys, and they looked good as returners, especially Taiwan. I mean, you see that dude, that he can fly. He can flat out fly.
Yeah, obviously, I'm a big fan of Taiwan Jones. We'll see if he sticks. It does seem to me, though, when you said that, you had mentioned that in the Slack channel, and my first reaction was kind of the same thing you said. I'm surprised Ray's not back there, but then I was also thinking, maybe they're just getting a good look at Jones and Cadet against each other because they're both competing for a spot in the backfield, both coming off big injuries. Are these two guys really head-to-head right now competing for that one spot? I mean, there really makes no sense to keep both of them.
Yeah, that's it's tough. Are they head-to-head? Absolutely, man. Like I said, they were head-to-head in the return game. They were head-to-head in the reps at the running back position, which Cadet was ahead of Jones, as far as I can remember, on the depth chart when it came to the offense and running back position. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many they're going to plan on keeping, but those two play a similar role. And I had mentioned it. I said Cadet was a guy I was going to watch this camp, and it was because that third running back spot is typically a position in the Dable Patriots scheme that is a receiving back, a guy that they can split out wide. Like, everyone needs to think about, the James White role, the Rex Burkhead role. That role is a prominent role. It's something that, Dable and this Patriots philosophy they have in every year. So those two guys are going to, be fighting out for that role and those snaps. And, I mean, it might not be that many snaps, but when you watch practice today, and I mentioned Shady McCoy, I mean, the things they were doing with the running backs and the tight ends are reminiscent of the Patriots. And that should be exciting to fans, splitting Shady out wide, motioning him to the middle of the field. And the one play, they had him out wide. They had Benjamin in the slot. They had DeMarco to the left of the quarterback. They motioned McCoy down the line of scrimmage and stacked pretty much right behind Benjamin, and he ran a little crossing route. Benjamin cleared it out, and McCoy wasn't open, but guess what? He took all those defenders over the middle with him, and they ran a little follow concept with a little angle or Texas route, what they call it, from DeMarco coming out of the backfield and across the middle. So everything's going to be revolved around Shady and these running backs. Cadet was out; he motioned out wide a lot. They use these running backs just to help these quarterbacks. They'll motion them out wide and use them to just ID coverage. They'll motion them back. They'll motion them back into the backfield. Like the one play, they had I think it was Cadet out wide, and they motioned him into the backfield on like a second down, I think it was, and Lorenzo had followed him. So right there it tells you they're in man coverage. So little things like that I noticed that I really liked. When it came to the tight ends, Clay had a couple drops today. I did like some of the concepts that they were working in the individual period, Aaron, where the tight ends coach, Rob Boris, was making the tight ends read him. So he was a defender, and the tight end would have to either sit, if it was zone, if that guy bailed out into the flats, or he'd run a pivot route if that guy sat in that hook the curl area, pivot out to the sideline. So they were putting the guys through the test on the first day, and I kind of want to talk about the adjusting to the speed of practice, because a lot of times fans don't really understand how to watch practice. If you're trying to get something out of practice other than finding that deep ball and those big plays where we can celebrate, you need to watch those individual periods, because like I said, each period is to build upon the next. So if you see the running backs working on certain footwork, or you see the quarterbacks working on with certain eye discipline or footwork, or even these tight ends, like I was just mentioned about how they're running option routes. Like these things are used later, so that they're going to take those building blocks that they learn that are installing in that individual period, Aaron. They're going to take it to the 7-on-7 period, and then guess what? Then after the 7-on-7 period, they're going to take those plays and concepts as a whole, as a team, take it to the team period. So that's one thing that I had mentioned off the get-go about adjusting to practice, because it's different than watching a game.
Sure.
Everything actually, it's almost slower. Although the segments are quick and they move through and they cycle people through, everything you watch, it'll tell you a story. It's part of the context of the overall practice when the guys get to the team. So, we're going to get into, the Josh Allen, missed throws. And you saw one of those passes, I posted it, where Dable was, and that's what I love about Dable, dude. He works with everybody, Aaron. Everyone. He's working with the tight ends. He's working with the quarterbacks. He was working with Shady on how to run the pivot route and how he wants him to pivot back out, right? And on that one throw I showed in that walkthrough, Allen airmailed it, and that's going to happen. I get
sure,
it, it's going to happen. But there's just so many things that you can watch and learn from some of the shorter segments of just individual and walkthroughs, because all of that matters later on when they get the team, and when they get the team, they should be able to execute it, and then you can see how much they're executing those techniques those coaches are teaching them in those individual periods. And that's why I know on Twitter I posted that Allen overall had a terrible day. I thought he had a bad day. I thought he tanked. I thought he showed physically some really bad behavior as far as, he was frustrated. It was completely obvious to the fans, and it was completely obvious to, obviously, his teammates, and they had to calm him down. So, I'm kind of rambling on here, but my point is, Aaron, everything serves a purpose. So, in games, everything happens quicker. In practices, you can see each individual segment, and when it gets a team practice, they should be able to execute by then. Sure. They should be able to execute.
Yeah, I think you saw some of the stuff. Those of us that weren't at Camp Live, they were doing a live feed of it for a little bit. And even during the QB running back drills, they're running running backs out of the backfield. And like you said, that it looks silly when they're in just the two of them out in practice, but then you put it into the 7-on-7, 11-on-11, and it starts to make sense. I get excited when you talk about them bringing Shady out of the backfield, or whoever it is, to motion. Because that was one of the things last year I was super frustrated with. When you watch other teams' games, you're seeing the quarterback get help from formations, from pre-snap stuff, and the Bills just really didn't do a whole lot of it. They were just kind of sitting there in the base, and it seemed like they were just kind of taking what came at them versus, hey, let's take a second, make some moves, see what we got, and then attack it that way, which, it's a nice philosophy. Obviously, it's the way most of the league runs offenses, so it's good to see that maybe the Bills are getting caught up to how everybody else is doing stuff. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick, we were talking about the running backs, and we were talking about that Jones cadet battle, and I think, to me, that is one of the most interesting things about this training camp period when you're watching things, is these guys are all teammates, right? But they're all competing for really limited amount of spots, and you have a guy, like you said, cadet, going to be in that maybe third running back role, has got to be out of the backfield catching balls. Obviously, I think he's better than Taiwan Jones at doing that as an offensive weapon. But then you have Jones, who's a guy who is obviously, I think, a much better special teams player all around, much more versatile. I would love to be a fly on the wall when they're sitting in one of those conference rooms at John Fisher this summer, when you have all the coaches there and they're trying to make these decisions, because they're not easy decisions. I know fans just sit and say, "Wow, Taiwan Jones stinks. He's not going to make the roster." But these coaches are having battles, right? And you got to pick your battles. So can you speak to anything like that of how close this competition is from the middle of the roster to the end of the roster?
No, I think you nailed it. You talk about Jones and his punt kick, or punt gunner responsibilities. He can get down the field. I mean, sometimes he misses tackles, but he can fly down the field. I like his speed, and you know what? He did stand out in the offensive side. It's something we're going to talk about is the Bills ran a lot of RPOs today. I mean, a lot of play action, a lot of RPOs, and a couple of the plays where they ran RPOs, the safeties bailed, and so it was a give situation where the quarterback is going to hand it off instead of pulling it and throwing. So on at least one or two of those plays, Jones was a running back, and he just bursts into the secondary. Because on these plays, when these guys bail like that, and they're big explosive plays, that's what's so exciting about what I saw today. I know I may have came off a little negative on Twitter, but there was some really exciting things that happened at camp, and Jones on those runs was one of them, because he was just getting into the secondary, because those RPOs will open up things in the middle, and he'll hit that hole. I mean, he'll hit it. You saw a few carries last year, more on the jet sweep, I believe it was, but he can run, man, and if they can get him the ball in some space, it's definitely going to be good for the offense. And then Cadet, like I said, I agree with you when it comes to him as a pass catcher. I think he's a pretty nuanced route runner. I think he can run pretty much any of the routes that a receiver is going to. Obviously, he's a little thicker than a receiver, so he's going to have a little different movement. But I think he can drop to his hips and sink and cut like a receiver needs to in some of these short to intermediate routes. But I think that is an exciting matchup, man. It really is, and I think after day one, it's a lot closer than I had thought it was going to be, because, like I said, Cadet was a guy I was watching closely. So I do agree with you head to head. That's definitely gonna be something I'll even be watching tomorrow when I go there.
Yeah, and I think it just points to that, all throughout this camp process, that there's really a lot of tight races that maybe we all don't think about, and that these coaches really have a tough time every night when everybody else is leaving camp for the night and they're breaking down film and they're trying to make an argument to keep these guys, because that process starts now, trying to dwindle down to your 53. So it's a fun summer, it's fun stuff. So one thing I want to get at, because you did get killed a little bit on Twitter here for having some negativity, and I didn't see this negativity. I saw what you were saying, and Erik Wood saw what you were saying too. I think he replied in that obviously the offense is going to be behind the D. Anyone that's watched football
hands down
understands,
every season, right?
Yeah, we all understand this. We hear it every year. So I think what you were saying is essentially that, and it just looks sloppy. Day one is probably going to look sloppy here for the first week or two, because the defense is going to be that far ahead. And let's be honest, man, the defense is the strength of this team, so they're going to probably dominate almost every practice session. So that negativity, we got to back off Erik a little bit, because it's definitely there, and it's definitely something that we should take a look at. But obviously understand that the offense is going to be a little bit behind. But you did follow it up with how excited you were about the way the offense looked as far as the X's and O's side of it. So go ahead and explain yourself, man.
Yeah, I mean, when I said overall it was terrible, because it was. I mean, there was bad snaps from Bodine. I mean, right at the first play, you saw Peterman, almost give Trey White a house call. The quarterbacks, especially McCarron and Peterman, it's something we always talk about, those far hash throws, those throws outside the numbers. They're struggling with that. I mean, they don't have the arm strength to always get it out there consistently and accurately. And especially Peterman, something we talked about last year with Peterman, when he needs to rifle it, he does lose accuracy. And you saw on one of the RPOs they ran, he made the good read. He made a really good read, but he sailed it to Kelvin Benjamin. I mean, when Kelvin Benjamin comes out that tunnel, he is literally, him and Edmonds they're huge guys. I mean, they're the biggest guys you see on the field. And for him to miss, Benjamin on that play, with Trey White in trail, that shouldn't happen. I mean, that shouldn't happen. Give him a shot. Give him a shot.
Yeah, and on that particular play, because I posted that one, and this is the thing that I've been hearing from the Peterman fans, is these are the throws that he's supposed to make. These are the ones where he's going to stand out above a guy that makes more miraculous throws like a Josh Allen. So, to me, those are the easy ones that he's got to be making, even though it's early in training camp.
Right. I totally agree with that. So, it was ugly, but again, it's the first day, and there's no pads. Yeah. So, I mean, the defense, it's hands down better. They're hands down better. I think everyone knows that. So I don't think me saying they're terrible on offense, I don't think that's really a surprise to anyone. Maybe it is, because obviously I took a little hit there. But
somebody got mad.
Someone got mad about it. And even when I was talking about Allen, he did have a couple good throws. Don't get me wrong. He had a good throw to DeMarco, which I love the play design. Let me start with that. because the play design was perfect. They had, I think it was Austin Proehl in a tight alignment to the boundary off the right-hand side of the offensive formation. He comes on an orbit motion, so he motions, arcs behind the quarterback. They hike the ball. They fake it to him. So they have all this cross flow and confusion, misdirection going. The ball handling skills by Allen was beautiful because he kind of held the ball. I want to say it was like down to his hip or even behind him, so the D couldn't even see it. So everyone's flowing with Proehl, and then you see DeMarco just slip out of the backfield, run basically like a rail or wheel route up the sideline. He's wide open. And that I don't think it would have been a touchdown, but it was an explosive play. It was a pretty pass, good trajectory on it. That was a really good throw there. He had a really good throw on an RPO. Again, it's really pretty. He's reading his safety, and this is something I'm going to segue into after I talk about this play. So it's an RPO play. The running back's coming downhill. While Allen's faking the ball to the running back, his eyes are up, all right? His eyes are up, and he's reading the safety. He's not reading a boundary defender. He's not reading a slot corner. He's reading a safety. And this, to me, signifies that they're building this offense long term. Why? Because when you read a safety in an RPO, you're trying to push the ball down the field. Mm-hmm. So, say pre-snap, you have two safeties high, right, Aaron? Yep. And ball snap, you put the ball in the belly of the running back. You're reading that safety. Say Jordan Poyer comes downhill because he's got the C gap. He's got to stop that run. Well, guess what? As soon as he does that, Foster, runs. I think it was like a 5 or 7 step slant or post to the middle of the field, and then Allen just rifled it to him. That, to me, is where Allen will thrive. All right. So, and it was a good throw. It was a little high. He could have let him inside, and honestly, Foster had that corner beat so bad. If Allen would have let him inside, it would have been a touchdown with Foster's speed. But I'll give him the credit. It was a strike. It was on a line, and it was an RPO. It's a very tough play to execute because I believe the running back was even to his left. So think about it. He takes a snap out of shotgun. He has to swing his body, looking with his body facing the running back to his left, but his eyes up at a safety, the safety to the right-hand side of the formation. So he had to swing his whole body around to get into a position to throw it to Foster. It was pretty. Don't get me wrong. It was really pretty. And again, I think it's plays like that signify, I don't know about Allen year one, how many snaps he's going to take this year. But when I see plays like that, I think long-term, because these are plays that Dable ran at Alabama. And what did they do at Alabama? They ran the ball, they ran the ball, they ran the ball. They looked for explosives. Yeah. That's where Allen's going to thrive. And him and Foster have something. They do have something.
It sounded like it on Twitter, man. Obviously, you kept hearing that name come up, Foster, and you picked him as one of the big, best players of the day.
Hands down.
Standout guy of the day, which is crazy for an undrafted guy to come out day one in camp and make such an impact. Do you think that he can maintain that here through camp?
I think so. Yeah, I do. It's a grueling process. You got to think about, obviously, where he came from. He came from a team that had a lot of competition. And, he had to earn his reps and snaps. And I know he didn't have the high-profile career, but, again, he's one of those guys with a chip on his shoulder. But he knows this offense. He was running plays. One of the deep over routes that Allen hit him on was a play that they ran at Alabama, a deep over route where he comes across the middle. He gains depth as he's going down the field, and he's gaining depth vertically, but he's also stretching horizontally. So with his speed, he can separate that way. Those are plays where he's going to excel. And we all know from seeing some of his clips and highlights, when he gets the ball in his hand, he does have some shiftiness to him. So I think this offense, especially when they want to go to like 3-by-1 sets, Aaron, where we have trips and then a single receiver, what I call ISO, any of those routes where you're isolating him, those are where he's going to shine. Because why? He can separate like the Percy Harvins, the Sammy Watkins. He can separate with his speed. He doesn't need to be schemed open. He can separate with his physical abilities. And I think those isolation routes, sort of like that RPO that I have mentioned, those kind of routes are where he's going to win. He's just got to hold on to the ball because he did have some issues in college with that.
Yeah, a player like that, though, gets me excited when you talk about his ability to separate. Obviously, Kelvin Benjamin doesn't separate in the traditional sense. He separates just with the sheer size and outpowering guys. So the Bills already have that. That's a good threat to have. You have Curley, who, just like you had mentioned in an article, has that good catch radius. The balls don't have to necessarily be accurate. He's just a good vet. He's going to find the holes. That's good. We're hoping Zay comes around and lives up to that hype. So you have just a lot of pieces in the wide receiver core. If you can get one of these guys, a young guy, to come and step up and be that one thing that they don't have, which is a guy with some separation speed that you can isolate, that's going to be pretty big. But it sounds like also Brandon Riley had a big day. So maybe this is similar to the Jones Cadet thing. Are these two guys going head to head throughout training camp? Because there's probably only 5 to 6 of these wide receiver roster spots. And I don't know about Foster too much, but I know Riley has struggled with finding a spot on special teams, and you're not going to be able to keep both of these guys, I don't think, if they're not special teams boys.
I liked Riley. He did stand out today. Like his hands. I've always liked his body control and ability to catch with his hands and stuff like that. That's something I've always liked about him. But I don't know. I don't know. He looks quicker. I do think he looks quicker than what I saw on film. Anyways, I've never seen him play live, but I think he looks quicker. He may even look leaner compared to what he was at Nebraska. So he's been putting into work. He looks like he's in good shape. And the catches he did have one of those over routes I had mentioned, and he snags it with his hands. So he's going to be another interesting prospect to watch because, again, it's that wide receiver position, man. Everyone's battling. Everyone's in there. There's no spot guaranteed,
And my only concern for Riley is that he doesn't do anything different enough to stand out as a prospect, right? Because I think Streeter is going to have a good camp. I think he might be there in that fourth receiver kind of guy already. So Foster can really stand out and be that speed guy. I just don't know if Riley brings something different to the table, but definitely going to be another interesting one to watch. So you talked about some of these Josh Allen missed throws and things like that. We talked about some of the Nate Peterman bad throws. One thing I didn't hear a whole lot about on Twitter was A.J. McCarron. I'm assuming he was just pretty steady throughout practice. Tell us what you saw out of McCarron.
Yeah, I thought of the 3 quarterbacks, he didn't let the mistakes, he didn't let the bad plays, the bad snaps, the fumbles get to him. He seemed steady. He seemed like nothing was bothering him. It's kind of his demeanor, he's kind of laid back. And I say the most accurate throw today probably was from him. He worked the right sideline where the stands are. He threaded one in there, and I can't remember if I posted that or not. I might have it. I could post it later. But he threaded it into a tight end in a really tight window, right on time, right on schedule. I thought he had the most accurate pass probably of the day. But he was A.J. McCarron today. Nothing special, really steady. But didn't really stand out overall.
Yeah, he definitely has been working hard. I mean, I've seen it out on a few different Instagram posts, not from him directly, but from a place that he works out at.
Sure.
Definitely been putting in the work. So I know that he is battling for that job. But you're right, the demeanor just doesn't seem like he's a very aggressive guy coming to take the job. So you look at these 3 quarterbacks, and I think today was kind of a telling tale of what we're going to expect throughout training camp. You're going to have Josh Allen making some incredible throws, making some just god-awful throws. I mean, you always mention we haven't seen all the film, but from what we have seen, that is pretty par for the course so far for Josh Allen. Nathan Peterman going to make some okay decisions, but he's going to put some of those throws out there. We saw the one almost get picked off by Trey, just some stuff floating around, the typical thing that we've seen from Nate. And you're going to see McCarron just kind of being steady. If you're a coach, you've been a coach before, and you have these 3 different types. Obviously, McCarron and Peterman are similar in skill sets, but one maybe appears to be a little bit more steady than the other. Do you take the gamble? Do you go with the steady? Do you go with the guy you know? I mean, where are you at with those 3 guys?
That's tough because, like I agree. I think the McCarrons and Petermans, they're very similar style players. But when I think about the teams that we're going to be facing early in the season, and some of the plays that I saw out there today, I'd mentioned how some of these RPOs and some of these plays down the field that Dable is installing seem to point to Allen. And just think about, man, if we're struggling on offense, which in those first few weeks, some of those teams are going to be really tough.
It's going to be rough, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need explosive plays, right? And I know Tyrod Taylor wasn't the best passer, but he did give us some explosive plays. He did make some plays, extended some games, wasn't losing games really as far as turning the ball over. I think it would be very difficult to throw Allen out there, But if Dable believes and the organization believes that they're going to need some of those explosive plays during, because think about it, they're evaluating every day throughout obviously preseason and camp now. So if they believe they need those explosive plays, they're going to need it. And some of the plays that they were thrown out there today down the field, it shows me that they're expecting obviously people to stack the box. So they're going to create conflict with RPOs, and they're going to push the ball down the field. Foster, I mean, some of the guys that were running the slot position with Foster, Ray McLeod, Curley, they were running some slot fades, which is something that's typical in the Patriots often. And it's one of the top concepts right now being run across the NFL and college ball. So you see them trying to push the ball down the field because they're expecting the box to be stacked. I mean, that's something we've been used to, right? I mean, that's something that we're used to seeing with Shady on our team. So I think it would be hard, though, to put Allen out there, man. I think it really would early in the season. So it wouldn't surprise me if, especially considering how they've treated young rookies outside of the quarterback position. I do think that they will probably lean towards one of the other quarterbacks before just throwing Allen to the wolves. And think about it right now. It was day one. He was the third quarterback out there. So sure. Allen was. So it's a work in progress, man.
No doubt.
It's a first day, and I know people were mad about what I said about Allen's practice today. But again, I revert back to I watched him in the individual periods. I watched him doing the walkthroughs. I watched him doing all the drills leading up to the team time, and he was still making some of the same mistakes. To me, that is inconsistency. That's not that's not really translating what you're learning to the team time when the speed is ratcheted up. But again, no pads. So that's the other thing. Today was basically almost like a 7-on-7 meet because there weren't too many runs because there's no hitting. There's really not much blocking because the guys can't really engage like they want to. So yeah. There's a lot of variables to a training camp practice today,
There is. And some of the stuff you said, though, really resonates with me because I am still, we saw a lot of articles and a lot of things going out the last week of it's a two-man battle for the starting position at quarterback. I don't believe it. I think Allen's very much in the race, whether or not he gets there. I do agree with you. I don't think they want him to be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, but I just really think that these coaches are going to have a tough time. You mentioned the big playability. I don't think this is going to be an offense that's going to put together long drives consistently and move the ball down the field. I think they're going to need big plays to stay in games. And when you look at the tape after this training camp, who's going to be the guy that's making those big plays? It's going to be Josh Allen. He's obviously going to make his mistakes and stuff like that. I think it's going to be more so once the pads come on and this defensive line is just eating up our offensive line. Josh Allen's hard to take down. He's scrambling around and making plays, improvising. I don't think you're going to see much of that out of McCarron and Peterman. So I think the coaches are going to have a tough task on their desk. And they might have to convince themselves of why not to start Josh Allen versus, to start him. I think they're going to have to say, these are the reasons why we shouldn't, even though what we're seeing makes sense for what we're trying to do. Right.
No, I agree. And again, today there's no pads. So a lot of times there were guys just running free, from the defense coming at the quarterback. So they're pretty much dead plays, but they try to play on. So it's just hard to gauge. It's really hard to gauge, a practice like today. Once pads go on, that's going to give you a better idea. But the speed was out there today. The guys were running around, and like I said, it was almost like a 7-on-7 meet out there. Just because there's no pads, there's a lot of passes, but I was encouraged. I was very encouraged from an offensive concept schematic standpoint because some of the stuff I saw was a combination of what he did with the Patriots, what he did in Alabama. He's bringing all of that knowledge and those concepts to this team, and it's going to be rather important because, as you said, I think they are going to struggle to get those explosive plays, those big plays, and touchdowns. So that game planning, that scheming is going to be a lot more important than people believe. That people are probably led on to believe right now.
Sure.
Just the way things are unfolding.
And obviously the offense is what everybody wants to talk about, but I want to get your opinion here real quick before we wrap up, that the defensive side of the ball, obviously we know Leslie Frazier, we know this defense is the strength of the team, but they got some new pieces, right? We got the big freak middle linebacker now. Anything stand out for you on the defensive side of the ball? Are they doing anything different that you were able to see, or was it all kind of vanilla day one stuff?
No, I didn't. I'll admit I didn't pay too much attention because of the whole pad situation. Can't really hit,
Yeah,
can't really thump. But I will say on the back end, the coverages, it's all the same, man.
yeah,
It was, and that's kind of what Poyer had told me. He said we're not going to be doing anything crazy. We're going to run what we run, and we're going to disguise it, and we're just going to play. We're going to the coaches are going to put us in the positions to make a play,
yeah.
and we're going to be we're going to have to do that. So I didn't see anything exotic, but it was day one. I saw one thing I did notice on some of these RPO plays, because some of them are, some of these RPOs are reading linebackers, so they're reading the Milanos, they're reading the Edmonds, and if they come downhill, they're throwing it, across the middle on these in-breaking routes. I saw, a couple of those guys jump up, get their hands up, and affect these passes. Go back and watch that throw to Benjamin. Go watch Milano climb the ladder on that play and make that throw. Go up, have Peterman throw that a little higher than he probably wanted to. So that could have affected the play too. So,
Yeah.
with all due respect to, Peterman, because I'm not trying to, make fun of him for, throwing that way over Benjamin's head, but maybe Milano affected that from the sideline. I can't see that, but I know Milano got up on that.
Yeah.
So they're smart, and what's good about this is they're practicing against these RPOs, this trend that's every offensive coordinator is probably installing more of this year. So they're seeing it every day. So how they're going to react to that is only going to help them, from seeing it in practice. So that's also another thing.
That's a great point.
That no one's really paying attention to. So the more creative your offensive coordinator is on your team, the more that the defense is going to see, and the more prepared they can be once the bullets start flying.
Yeah, and that doesn't concern me for the guys like your Poyers and Hydes. I think you trust those guys, but you talk about those two very fast, very aggressive linebackers, Milano and Edmonds, and those guys I think are going to need that, because I do think they might be the kind of guys that bite on some stuff, over pursue some things and have to make up for it with their athleticism. But if they're working on it all summer against your offense, they kind of get a feel for the game, what to expect in those positions. So that's only really a benefit to that young linebacking core.
No, definitely, and I mean Milano looked good. I mean, he didn't look like he was injured at all. He looked good. He looked like he was in great shape, actually. So those linebackers, I think everyone is excited about him, and they have a right to be.
Awesome, man. Well, any final thoughts here before we wrap up? I know you're jazzed up for practice. Anything else you want to let the fans know that you saw that just stood out to you here?
No, I think we covered everything, man. I think I talked about the movement from the offense with the running backs and tight ends. Foster, yeah, he stood out. We saw a lot of tight ends wide. We saw fullbacks in the slot. They're moving guys all around.
It seemed like it. I mean, there was a DeMarco in the slot people were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there was guys everywhere. And so to see that on day one, and Erik Wood kind of, alluded to that, is it must be refreshing. Oh, it is. It definitely is, because this is day one. Think about that. This is day one. And to see that type of, variation in personnel groupings, formations, alignments, obviously concepts that we talked about, that's exciting. I know the execution wasn't good, and I said they were terrible today, but when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, that's exciting. And that's why, like I said, I don't know why everyone's reacting the way they are about my offense was terrible today, Allen was terrible today. But overall, the grand scheme of things, the offense did impress me from a schematic standpoint. So I'm excited about that. You know me, the X's and O's. So.
Yeah, no, that gets me excited too, though, man, because, that's fine that they're terrible today, and they might be terrible for the next few weeks. McDermott always points to it. This is a process. This is year one of a new offense, new players, young guys. They might be terrible halfway through the season, but at some point it's going to click, and you're going to have a really potent offense. So fans just need to bear with it. We can't overreact. If it comes into the second preseason game and you're just seeing some mistakes, it's a lot for these guys to take in. It's going to be an innovative offense. Even from the guys that were here last year, it's a lot different what they were trying to do. So mistakes are bound to happen. Defense, like you said, is not only going to be ahead because they were already in the system a year ago, but it's a better unit overall. So they're going to remain ahead throughout training camp. Let's just hold on and enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah, definitely, man. Like I said, I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since I've been back here, not just for camp, but back to the alma mater. And it was nice to be out there today. I'm excited about tomorrow's practice.
Awesome, man. Well, let me know if you want to go again tomorrow, if anything cool happens, so the fans can stay tuned. I'm sure definitely tune into the Cover One Twitter, because Erik's going to be out there giving you the content you want. Not only the content you want, but explaining what's going on versus just showing you, hey, this Alan completed this pass. A lot more detail goes into what he's posting out there, and you can kind of learn on the fly. And if you haven't gotten a chance, go check out the episode last night from Cover One Buffalo. We had Kyle Tremble on from Banged Up Bills. I thought it was a super cool episode. A lot of interesting stuff in there about some of the injuries. Obviously, we're already started practice now, but the content still is good. So go check that out and dig back through the archives if you want something to listen to during the day, getting excited for practice. But we're going to let you guys go. I know you guys want to get on and rip up all the content you can get. So head over to cover1.net and get in there, get all the content you can, and then we'll be giving you more tomorrow. So thanks for listening. As always, we can't do it without you guys, and it just feels good to be back into football, man. Right, Erik?
Yeah, man. I'm stoked right now. I'm ready, dude.
All right. Well, enjoy the night, you guys, and we'll be back at it soon.